How can we access it?
Well, I normally don't record. The reason is because if I record it on Zoom, there's a way to record it, but then you have to transfer it, and then I have to convert it to YouTube. It took me about 2 hours to do it. The once or twice I did it, so I just can't do it. It's too hard for me.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, nothing I can do about that. Okay, it's 9:00. Now, I was going to read to you a email that somebody sent me, but I can't read it because it's on my phone, and I'm recording. I didn't realize that I have to I'm recording on my phone, but I'll just tell you.
Okay, good.
Can you get my text message?
Get out of text message.
So you're somebody's not on mute. So, any event, the person. Well, let me see if I could. I'm afraid if I start patching around my computer. Okay, I won't be. But the person told me that person doesn't live here, doesn't live in Highland Park, but the person said that he or she had a medical problem years ago, and they almost died from from a blockage, and and after they recovered, they started saying Asher Yaztar with tremendous kavanah, because they recognize how delicate everything is in the internal organs and how precarious everything is, and the person had a great deal of hakar satov, and but then as time went on, the person lost the sensitivity. And when he saw my email today, when I sent him the email from Bini Blumenfrucht, so that gave him a jolt to start doing it, to start saying it again with feeling. So that's the problem that we all have, that we get inspired by something, and then as time goes on, we lose the inspiration. But Asher Yatzar is very important tefillah to hold on to and to be inspired by. So, and what I'm going to do this week is I want to share. Last week we talked about some of the halachas of Asher Yatzar. This week I want to talk about the meaning of the bracha. Now the bracha itself, the Shulchan Aruch has a very long explanation of the bracha. It's the longest sif in Shulchan Aruch. That's what Rav Asher Weiss said, and it goes like on, and it explains the bracha. And the Shulchan Aruch never does that. The Shulchan Aruch is not a commentary on the siddur. And here's the Shulchan Aruch. There's all this whole long arichos explaining each phrase of the bracha, and if you read it, it's just the first time I read it, it was just a mishmash, because it's like coming from here and coming from there, and this pshat and that pshat. But the way to approach these things is everything in the Shulchan Aruch is coming from a source, and if you learn it in the source, then you see how the Shulchan Aruch wove together the different sources. So that's what I'm going to try to do tonight, to show you the various sources, and I'm going to break up the bracha into 4 parts, and that is, first of all, what does it mean? Asher Yatzar Sa'adam b'chachma. God created man with wisdom. What is the wisdom, and what does that have to do with? And then chalalim, nekuvim, chalalim, that there are cavities and there are openings. What does that refer to? And then the end of the bracha says Rofei Kol Basar. God is the Rofei. What does the Rofei have to do with Asher Yatzar, with the person relieving himself? And then finally, what is Mafli Lasos? That he did something amazing. What's the amazing thing? And in a general sense, the question is, what does this bracha have to do with relieving oneself and using the facilities? The bracha makes absolutely no mention of a person going to the bathroom. And the Aruch HaShulchan already noted this. He says, Birchas sheyatzar mishunim b'kol brachos. It's different than all other brachos. The kol brachos heim tzaras mufurashas al inyan shosa. All other brachos, it's straightforward. K'mo b'berchas hanenin. If you make hamotzi, kishochu lechem, amar motzi lechem in arts. If you eat an apple, you say bari priate. So it's obvious what the bracha is talking about. V'chein kulam uvirchas v'shachar gampin. Also the brachas we make in the morning when we wake up. Ubracha zu, but the bracha of Yatzar is arucha. It's a long bracha, much longer than most other brachas. V'ikar ha'inyan shaleha mevarchem lo huskara klal. And the main theme or topic of the bracha is not even mentioned. V'nira Vanias Daiti. So he said that's a question. That's his question. Why is that? Why doesn't it explain the bracha? Why didn't it say what it's all about? So his basic explanation, he says, "Emes keinu the chamel matzah makom brachos lahaski." You see us in the kavim. The Chazal intentionally did not want to be too graphic, and they didn't want to mention the fact that a person relieves himself in the bathroom because it's not the kind of thing you're supposed to discuss. It's kids talk about the bathroom words, but mature people don't describe those bodily functions. And then in the it says you can't say it's a berachas hanenin. It's a bracha that you make before you have pleasure, like a bracha on food, because here the bracha is after you relieve yourself. And also, normally a bracha, the person chooses to have the no, but here he has no choice. So in any event, he says, the Chazal intentionally made it a bracha, a broad general bracha about the creation of man. I'm not sure what he means, but this is the way I understand it. He's saying that the bracha is an allusion to the fact that we relieve ourselves, and it's it's a bracha on that where we praising Kadosh Baruch Hu for creation of man, and inherent in that is the fact that we have a urinary tract system, a renal system that allows us to relieve ourselves. But it's not spelled out specifically in the bracha. It's just but the bracha is a general description of Asher Yatzar Adam, how God created man, and the bracha didn't want to be too specific. That's the Aruch HaShulchan's approach. I'll show you that they from the Achronim that they don't agree with this premise that the bracha is just the general bracha. Because the Achronim tried to figure out how the different facets of the bracha are related to the theme, which is the fact that the person is able to relieve himself, and they show how they're connected. Okay, so first I want to show you. I showed this to you last week. That the bracha is a tremendous segula. The Sefer Seder Hayom, which is a Kabbalistic Sefer, was written about 500 years ago, and he says, if a person says this bracha carefully, he'll never get sick. He won't need a doctor. And he won't need to be cured. Therefore, a person should say it carefully and have kavanah. And many Sfarim say that you should read the bracha from a text, and it should be said word for word. What's the reason for that? Why is the bracha so powerful? So I heard a shiur from Rav Asher Weiss on Asher Yatzar, and he connects it. It's on his website. He has a website, Minchas Asher, where he has shiurim every week, and he has an archives. So he connects it to the chinuch. The chinuch is talking about the bracha of Berachas Hamazon, and but he says mitocha isaras hatov hazeh benafshenu v'yichum achshasenu l'hodus by being inspired to thank Hashem for the food that we ate, shekol tovas kulusbo v'hu melech aleim v'shalcham, and we recognize that the sustenance that we have comes from God. Al kol sheyafos anu zochim v'maisa tov hazeh, we merit by saying Berachas Hamazon lahamshich aleinu mibrachosov. We merit to have more brachas. By benching, we merit to have more brachas. And Rav Asher Weiss explained, because if a person is appreciative, so then the person if somebody is doing us a favor, if we're appreciative, that person is inclined to continue giving us favors. But if the person is not appreciative, if the person has no appreciation, so then why should I continue helping that person? So if we show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we recognize that it's not the reason why we're able to have beautiful and lavish meals is not because we're so smart and we worked hard and we're building up a business and we have a lot of money. It's because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the theme of Berch Samazon. Azana Salam Kulutu. God provides, and if we recognize that, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu reciprocally will bless us with further sustenance. So the same thing is true of Asher Yaztar. If we recognize the magnificent system that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into place in our bodies and how complex it is and how intricate it is, and it keeps on operating for years and years. You have a car that's complicated. You need a mechanic. That the mechanic has to you have to have a tune-up and you have to have an oil change. And the human body is more complex than any factory in the world, and there's more parts to it, and the scientists still don't understand how everything works. And it's an enormous machine that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in a compact way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created and put it inside our bodies. So if we're appreciative, so then then HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not have to plague us with illness, that we should recognize our dependence on Him, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will fulfill the end of the bracha, the close of the bracha, which is Rofei Kol Basar Mafli Lasos, that He heals all mankind. He provides health for all mankind. I saw a comment in the World of Prayer, which is written by Rabbi Monk. He this is like a general introduction to our shir. He says, by serving as the bracha after excretion, it has the effect so typical of a Jewish view of life, of bringing even the grossest physical act within the orbit of religion. It takes something that is not even mundane. It's something that is gross, and there's a bracha for it. It elevates it to the area of religion, of kedusha and sanctity. In the same way, it can be said that the physical act of excretion, without which it would be impossible to exist and to stand before God's countenance, is divested of all that is vulgar and repulsive by this bracha. By saying the bracha, the excretion is gross and vulgar and repulsive, but the bracha removes all that, because it shows in this way the religious precepts elevate all the organs of man, the very lowest which serve purely physical ends, as well as the noblest and most highly developed ones, to the rank of moral and ethical agents. I had a piece from the Vilna Gaon, which I thought was in my notes here, but I obviously forgot to put it in. The Vilna Gaon says, I mentioned it last week, why does it say, it's known before your heavenly throne? Why your throne of glory? Why are we invoking that in the bracha? We don't mention that anyplace else. So the Vilna Gaon says it's bedafka in this bracha that deals with excrement and physical needs, all these things that appear to be so gross. We recognize that God is involved in our lives down to the tiniest minutia, and therefore God is, if not for God's involvement, the whole system would fall apart. And it's only because God is His providence, His ashkacha, includes every single part of our body, and as a result, we recognize God's tremendous chesed that He does to us. There was another piece that I didn't have time to find on the internet. I heard Rabbi Goldberg said a shir on Asher Yaztar. It was an article written by a doctor who relates how when he was a child in his yeshiva, they had an Asher Yaztar sign posted on the wall, and he thought that this is so silly and it's so inappropriate. Why we're making a big deal about going to the bathroom when we have a bracha? And then as he became a physician, and when he recognized how tremendously complex the human body is, and the bracha speaks about him, if anything opens up that's not supposed to be open, or closes is not supposed to be closed, it'll have a disastrous effect that the person will not be able to survive. I feel shalachas. And the truth is, we know today so much more about how the body functions than than scientists understood for the last since the beginning of creation. And it's amazing that Chazal had such a profound understanding of the intricacy of the inner workings of the body, and they understood that there are things that have to be opened and things that have to be closed, and if they're going to be anything that's not functioning properly, a person will not be able to survive. So this doctor said that the more he became involved in medicine, the more he would recite the bracha with kavanah. And then he said there was somebody who he was very close with, who he was in an accident, and his systems closed down, his renal system closed down, and then slowly it healed, and the doctors felt it was a miracle. And finally, when it was functioning properly, he suggested to this person that he say the bracha of Asher Yaztar, and the person did so, and he says, and I'm the father of that person. I'm the father. His name was Josh, and he says you can imagine it brought tears to my eyes and to his eyes. And that's really that's what Bini Blumenfrucht, if you saw my email, that's what she was writing about. How she unfortunately she was seriously ill, and she eventually died from her illness. And she said she never realized how dependent we are, and how much gratitude we have to have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that everything works properly and it functions on its own, and we don't have to go for tune-ups or anything. So when we think we go to the doctors take care of everything. The doctors, they do what they can, but the doctors do not control the entire human body. So the bracha is a very profound one, because it highlights that things that we think that we don't even pay attention to, and we think are mundane. And the bracha of Asher Yatzar is the most often repeated bracha. We say it, a normal person says it, as you get older, you say it more and more every day, because you have the need to relieve yourself more often. Who knows how many thousands, tens of thousands of times a person says the bracha, and unfortunately we can go through our whole lives and never appreciate it once. And it's only when there's a problem, then all of a sudden, then we say, I really appreciate what the bracha is all about. Okay, so let's dive into what is the meaning of the bracha. Let's take the bracha apart and see what it says, and how does that relate to one relieving of oneself. So the Gemara in brachos, which we saw last week, the bracha is found in the Gemara in brachos. The Gemara says when you come out of the bathroom, Omer brachata bracha sheyatzar tzadam b'chachma v'arva l'kavim chalul chagav yadu v'neki. The same bracha that we have. So the first question is, what does b'chachma mean? What's the chachma of the that the bracha is referring to? So there are 4 different explanations of what b'chachma means. The first explanation is Rashi. Rashi says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bara es adam b'chachma u'barva l'kavim harvei v'afal b'kein haruch b'sochu kol yamav. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the body, and in the body is a ruach. He compares Rashi. I'll show you the beginning. Rashi says, "Keneged shaguf chalo k'modo." The body is hollow, like they used to have these leather jugs or flasks that people used to use to fill with water. If there'll be a little hole, the jug, all the air will come out of the jug. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baras Adam, B'chachma, V'arva, N'kavim, Aval B'kein, Aruch B'socho. Even though there's all sorts of passageways and hollows and openings and entrances, still the Ruach does not escape from the body. Now, and Rashi says, and that's V'zuhu Pliya V'chachma. That's the Pliya and the Chachma. In other words, when the end of the bracha says, U'mafli La'asos, that God is amazing, it's referring to this idea that even though there's holes in the body, the ruach doesn't go out. Now, what ruach is Rashi talking about? So, usually ruach, we think of ruach as meaning air. So it could be that Rashi means that the body has to have air in order that the cavity should not collapse. Maybe that's what he means. I don't know. But I saw in one of the Svarim that Rashi's not talking about air. He's not talking about avir. He's talking about the spirit. The soul, which is Chazal referred to that as also a ruach, like ruach ufanayato, the pasuk says. So it's the spirit of man is intertwined with the body. It dwells in the body, and if the body is sick, then the ruach departs. So and it stays. The chachma is that it stays connected to the body throughout a person's lifetime, and it doesn't somehow or another drift away and float away. That's the chachma according to Rashi. So we have to ask ourselves, well, if that's what chachma is, that the body has all these holes and the ruach, the neshama doesn't escape, how does that relate to the theme of the bracha or the point of the bracha, which has to do with relieving ourselves? So I think that perhaps it's because since the bracha is going to talk about the openings, and we'll see the openings have to do with the with the fact that God allowed us to remove the refuse from the food. So maybe that's why it makes mention of the fact that even though there are these openings, it is a chachma. That's Rashi's pshat. Tosa says a different pshat. Tosa says sheyotzar salam b'chachma. Right? Tosa says in the Tanchum it says vayirakim es adam amar rabun b'chachma shehiskim mizonosav achak baro. God created man after the whole world, after everything else. Because l'chein nivra b'erev Shabbos k'dei sheyikanas l'suda miyad. If God had created man at the beginning, let's say on Sunday, then the person would have nothing to eat for the rest of the week until God created everything else. So He intentionally waited till the end of the week, till the last day on Friday, to create man. And it even, you might think that that's strange. Why were the trees created in the foliage? Why was that created before man? So it was created before man because otherwise, how could man exist? I always thought that I always wanted to meet a person who teaches evolution or who believes in evolution. One of the amazing things is that if man evolved, which there's so many reasons why it's illogical, but let's say if man evolved, it concurrent with the evolution of man was that there had to be the exact form nourishment and food sources that would support the human body. And you can't, a person can't eat anything. We have the deers walking around here in our neighborhood. They chew on the leaves and the grass. If we would do that, we would get sick and we would die, and we wouldn't have the proper nourishment. So it's amazing how there's the whole spectrum of vitamins in different foods, and there's proteins and there's carbohydrates and whatever we need, and there's hydration. All the things that we need are all there. So even if you accept this idea that man somehow or another was a mutation and we went mutated from one thing to the next, if the entire rest of the world was not set up for the food chain for man, then even if there was a person that mutated, he would have nothing to eat and he would die. So, but anyway, that's what the bracha is highlighting, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu provided us with all the food that we needed in order to survive, even before He created man. So again, the question is: so what does that have to do with the theme of Asher Yatzar? That we're reciting it when we go to the bathroom. So anybody want to offer a thought? Why should Chazal have included this in Asher Yatzar? Anybody? Okay. If you think of something, you'll tell me. I thought because the point is that because Asher Yatzar deals with the food is processed in our bodies, so the food is a very integral element in Asher Yatzar. And what happens to the food? So at the very beginning of Asher Yatzar, it's talking about how the fact that there is food is Asher Yatzar Salam B'Chachma. God created the food chain with tremendous chachma, because He created all the needs of man in advance of man coming into existence. And then it's those foods that get processed, and the human body is able to extract the nutrients from the food, which is another amazing thing. And then the leftover stuff that we don't need, there's a whole internal system of removing the trash and getting it out of our bodies. So this is like a prelude to the fact that we're going to be talking about, that we're going to focus on the renal system of the person. There's a third explanation of what it means b'chachma in the Beis Yosef. Rav Yosef Cairo says She says, Adam davar baruch shachachma neflahi. The way that man was created is tremendous chachma neflahi. It's an amazing chachma, which, as I said before, we understand that far more than any other people, any other generation, because we understand the unbelievable intricacy of the human body. You could write 1,000 volumes about how the genes and the glands and the secretions and the balances and the blood pressure, and there's all these different systems in the body. There's the cardiac system and the renal system, and they all function together in harmony, and they all get along with each other, and they all support each other, and and they operate. If a person is healthy, they can operate for 100 years without any tune-up. So that is the enormous chachma. If a scientist tried to design a body, it would be impossible. There's no way they could. Maybe they could make 10,000 machines in order to have a human body, to do all the different functions of a body. But to have it all compacted into the brain, and I mean all the things that the body is able to do are all amazing. So that's a chachma. I mean, that to me is the simplest explanation, that God created man with chachma. Rashi and Tosas have these explanations of that it's referring to more specific things. Rashi says it's the fact that the neshama doesn't escape. That's the chachma. And Tosas says it's the fact that there's the food chain was there and ready for man as soon as he was created. The final explanation is the Marsha. The Marsha says, he quotes Rashi and he quotes Tosfos, and then he says, "V'od yeshlam the chachma kai al ha'adam shenasan hakadosh baruch hu chachma b'riyasol lo kein shar bali chai shenasam chachma." Asher yotzer salam b'chachma doesn't mean God created it with wisdom. It means that God created man with wisdom. It goes on ha'adam. Asher yotzar is the b'chachma is not going on God. It's going on man. There's two objects that precede the word chachma. There's Asher Yatzar, which refers to God, and Es Adam refers to man. So which one is it? Who's the chachma connected to? Is it the Yotzer or is it the Adam? So Rashi and Tosas understand it to be referring to somebody has to mute themselves. Rashi and Tosas understand that it's referring to the Yotzer.
You have both volumes there?
Hello, somebody's not on mute. You gotta mute yourself, please, because otherwise we'll hear your conversation. So Rashi says that Rashi and Tosas understand the chachma referring to the creator, but the Marsha says the chachma is referring to man. The man was created with chachma, and in contrast to the animal kingdom. So the Aruch HaShulchan adds that the chachma of man. Why is that significant to be mentioned? Is because the chachma man is modest. When a person relieves himself, nobody does that in public. In contrast, an animal, if a dog finds a tree, the dog relieves himself or herself. So what's the difference is because human beings have a level of intelligence that they realize that certain things are private and they're not to be done in public. So that's the chachma of man is the basis for human modesty when a person relieves himself in the bathroom. So there you have 4 explanations of the chachma. You will see the Shulchan Aruch quotes 3 of them. It either means that the creation of man. Here, I'll show you. Let's go to the Shulchan Aruch, and I'll show you how the Shulchan Aruch quotes these 3 explanations. Shulchan Aruch says, I left out the first page of Shulchan Aruch, but the first page of Shulchan Aruch says that Asher Yotzer Sadam B'chachma means that there was B'chachma Nefula, which is the explanation of the Beis Yosef. I forgot to put in the page before this. And then the second explanation is Al Shem Shaguf Dam L'Nod Moli Ruach, that it's like a jug that has a ruach inside and it has holes, and still the ruach doesn't go out. That's Rashi's pshat. If you notice, there's a little base here, and the base is the Ber Hagola. Bepirish Rashi Sham. The source is from Rashi. V'yesh meforshim b'chachma shehiskim b'zonos shalom harishon. The chachma is that he created the sustenance for man before he created man, and so the little gimel here says that comes from Tosas. But the first explanation. Let me get my Shulchan Aruch. I'm sorry. The first explanation on the other side of the page, the Beis Yosef, the Rav Yosef Cairo is the Beis Yosef was Rav Yosef Cairo. So on the beginning he says, the creation of man is with amazing wisdom. So that was the explanation that we saw in the Beis Yosef. So in the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef quotes these three explanations. Either it means b'chachma means that it was a tremendous wisdom, or it means that the spirit doesn't escape the body, or it means that the that HaKadosh Baruch Hu provided sustenance for man even before he was created. Okay, now we come to Chalolim. That the body is full of chalolim, which are cavities. The body has chalom, nekavim. The nekavim are holes, and it has chalolim. So what are these? What are these cavities and what are these holes? So Rashi says on the Gemara, Rashi says that it refers to the nekavim. Rashi says nekavim hapsuchim kagon hapeh o achotem o piatabas. The nekavim are external entrances to the body, or exits from the body. It's the mouth, or the nose, or the anus. Those are areas where the body is connected to the outside world. And what is the chalalim? The chalalim, Rashi says, is kagon halev. It's like the heart, hakeres, or the stomach, or mayayim, or the intestines. So the chalalim are in the internal organs. There are chalalim. There are areas of cavities, of emptiness, in order that the organs can function properly, and the nekavim refers to the external entrances to the body. And when it says so Rashi says when it says if any of them will be open, if any of these will be open, it's referring to the cavities. If there'll be a hole in the heart, or in the intestines, so we know that a person can't survive if it's punctured, and the food's leaking out of the intestine, or if there's a hole in the heart, then the blood is leaking out. So a person can't survive if there's a nekev in the internal organs. So and Rashi says in Yiposeach. And you saw saying when it says if they will be closed, a person can't survive. Koi and the kavim, it is referring to the holes. So where are those holes? The holes are in the mouth, and in the nose, and in the anus. If they would be closed, a person could not survive. So the plain meaning is because eventually a person, you could keep your mouth closed for a while, but if you won't be able to open it, you won't be able to eat, and if the nose is closed, you won't be able to breathe, and if the anus is closed, you won't be able to, the excrement can't come out. So eventually a person will die. Now there is a girsa in the Gemara that says when it says Ef shel amol fenecha. So there are those that add afilu shah achas, even for one moment. They won't be able to survive even for one moment. So that girsa is quoted by is quoted by the Rambam. The Rambam has that girsa. Where do I have the Rambam? The Rambam has the girsa of Afil Shah Achas. Here, the Rambam says, we won't be able to survive even for 1 hour. And the Rush says the same thing. And the Rif also has that girsa. So the we won't be able to survive even for 1 hour. So there's a sefer called Abu Draham, which is written by one of the early Rishonim, and he has a beautiful commentary on Tefillah. It's one of the fundamental people who expounded on the meaning of Tefillah, and he disagrees with the Rambam and the Rush and the Rif, and he says that he can't justify this phrase Afil Shalachas. He says, "Shim b'secha chamehem oyim b'secha chamehem." Klomar, im yisosem aver mimash darkei os pasuach. If a organ that's normally open, kagon beis habliya v'nikve hashesi v'harei, the throat, or it means the esophagus where the food goes down, or the nikve hashesi v'harei is I think the English word is urethra, or the anus, where the urine and the waste, the feces come out of. So if those areas are sealed, then a person would not be able, the food would not be able to get into the body, and the waste would not be able to be removed from the body. That's what it means. So this is not like Rashi, because Rashi says that the organs that we're talking about are the mouth and the nose and the anus. That's what Rashi says. Rashi says that's Ipasech, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the same. The mouth or the nose or the anus. But Rashi doesn't mention other internal organs, just the anus. And the Abu Dram doesn't talk about the mouth, he doesn't talk about the nose. It's all about the internal organs for digestion and removal of the waste from the body. So, and he says, or if there be a organ that's normally closed, then it'll be open. Kagon hatabur, like the area where the umbilical cord comes from, the belly button, uvenei miyayim, and the stomach or intestines. Any yochel is kind of feel shachas. So he says, Varami Rutenberg kaser shein omar feel shachas. Rami Rutenberg takes out that phrase. He says it's the wrong girsa to say shachas. Why? Sherei so same as piv harbe shos v'yachol achios. A person can keep his mouth closed for a long time and continue to survive. So therefore, how could you say that if they'll be closed, you won't be able to survive even feel shachas? And the same thing is true if it refers to the anus or to the renal system. It's not fatal in shachas. It takes a few days or longer. So the Marami Rutenberg, who was actually the Rebbe of the Rush, says that you take out afil shachas. So there's a lot of discussion in the Tur and the Beis Yosef to try to justify what that means afil shachas. They have the gears of afil shachas. So the Tur says we wouldn't be able to survive, and he understood it to mean even for a moment. He says there's an amazing Gemara in Nida. The Gemara makes the observation that when a fetus is in uterine, where does the baby get nourishment from? Where does the embryo get the fetus get that nourishment from? From the umbilical cord, which is connected to the area of the belly, where eventually becomes the belly button. So that area is open. Upiv sasam, and the mouth is closed. The baby does not breathe on its own. It gets the oxygen because what's there to breathe? It's inside the mother's womb. So how does the baby get oxygen? So it's the most unbelievable and amazing phenomenon that the baby is inside the mother. And again, I want to ask the evolutionists how that man until there was a system of reproduction, then even if you had one person was a mutation, you wouldn't have any more of them. So you had to be concurrent. With the mutation had to be a system reproduction. And the system reproduction is unbelievably incredible. That from a little cell, it grows inside the mother's stomach, and it develops, and it's protected, and it's sustained. If babies were not born that way, if babies were born by storks, they came from someplace with a stork, and you would tell somebody, I'm thinking of having a plan to grow babies inside people's stomachs, they would think that you're completely insane. But that's what Akash Baruch did. Inside the mother's stomach, inside the womb, the baby grows, and all the nourishment comes from the mother, and the baby not only doesn't have to breathe, but the baby does not breathe. The baby would breathe. If it opened his mouth, he would breathe in waste products and blood and other things, and it would kill the baby. So the umbilical cord is open and the mouth is closed. As soon as the baby is born, the opening to the stomach closes, and I'm not. If we had Josh Siegel on the phone, maybe he could explain how all these things take place. V'nistam hapeh, v'nistam hapasuach, the niftach hasasam. That which is closed means the mouth that was closed when the baby was in uterine, all of a sudden opens. They spank the baby, and the lungs start working, the baby starts crying, the baby starts breathing. What an amazing thing. As soon as the baby hits the world, the baby starts to breathe. The mouth opens. Before that, the mouth is sealed, so nothing can get in. As soon as the baby comes out, the mouth opens. Chazal understood this process 2,000 years ago. And that which was the umbilical cord, which was the point of entry for all the nourishment for the baby, that is sealed. That becomes sealed. So Ilmale Kain EF Shalamod. So the Beis Yosef explains that it means that if not for the fact that in other words, when it says it means when the baby is born. This is how the Beis Yosef explains the Torah. The Torah is saying that when the baby is born, if the umbilical cord area will stay open, or the mouth will stay closed, then the baby could not survive, and that's why it's afilu shoachas, because immediately the baby has to start breathing. If the baby is unable to breathe, within a few moments the baby will be brain dead and the baby will expire. So as soon as the baby is born, that's what it means. It's such a powerful thought. Afilu shoachas, even for a moment. Every single one of us has to be. Who thinks about that? That when we were born, that God allowed us to exist by creating a system where our mouths open and the umbilical cord closed. If those things wouldn't have happened immediately, then none of us would be where we are now. We wouldn't be around. So that's what we're referring to so that's what the Beis Yosef explains. Rabbeinu Asal Afuki Merami Rutenberg. The Beis Yosef, the tour that I just showed you is coming to disagree with the Marami Rutenberg. Shekasav Shengli Gros Afilo Sha'achas. The Marami Rutenberg says you take out that phrase even for 1 hour because Harbi shows Yachol Achios, because a person could live for a long time with their mouth closed. So he says, V'huzal Baliashiv the Shabri Garcina Afilo Sha'achas. The tour is explaining why that it is a proper text, Sha'achas. When the baby is born, if those changes would not take place at the moment of birth, the baby should not survive. So here we have, according to this explanation, Afilu Sha'achas, again is talking about the moment of creation. The beginning of the bracha b'chacham, according to Tosfos, is talking about the moment of creation of all mankind. That God prepared the food for all us, for everybody to be sustained with, and then the bracha goes on to say that if it'll be if what'll be closed is open, what's open will be closed. That's referring to the moment of birth that a person could not survive. So the Beis Yosef disagrees with the Tur. I think I'm not going to read to you the whole thing inside, but he says that when it says nekavim, chalulim, it's a plural. And why does it repeat nekavim, chalulim? Because there's a lot of nekavim in the body. There's a lot of holes in the body, in different organs, and there's a lot of chalalim. There's a lot of hollow areas. So, according to the Tur's explanation, when it says she'im yisosem echad mehem, if one of them will be closed, that's referring only she'im yisosem echad mehem. When it says that's referring to the mouth exclusively. It's not referring to all of the other openings in the body. When it says if one of those openings will be closed, the person cannot survive. It's limited, according to the Torah. It's limited to the mouth when a baby is born at the time of birth. Whereas but when it says when it says that if any of those openings are not closed, we could not survive. That's referring not only to the umbilical cord, but it's referring to all the openings in the body that like the stomach and the other areas, the lungs, the heart, that they're closed organs. So he's saying that the bracha is not parallel. That when it says yipasecha mehem, it's referring only yisasem echad mehem is only referring to the mouth. When it says yisasem echad mehem, it's referring to all the internal organs. So that's why he rejects that explanation. And he also asked that how is it related to he says shim yishar hapes sasum seis laver olam lo efshel iskayim efisha achas near she'ein inyan la'asiyas rachav. If it's when it says that if it will remain open, if it will remain closed, it's referring to the moment of creation. So what does it have to do with a person's bodily functions, that a person is relieving himself? So therefore, the Beis Yosef has a different explanation. He says, if those organs that have openings, if the openings would be closed, or the organs that are closed would be open, you wouldn't be able to survive even 1 hour. So he says, what does that mean? There's a time limit how long a person could keep, like you could keep your mouth closed. If you don't breathe, if you keep it completely sealed, you could survive maybe a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But once that point is reached, you can't survive even for a moment. Since the organs that since the one of the organs that have to remain open are the anus and the urethra, so therefore by saying if the organs that are open would be closed, it's referring to those organs that are part of the renal system. So therefore, it's appropriate to mention in the bracha. That's how he connects. He's trying to find a way to connect that phrase to the bracha of Asher Yaztar, which deals with a person relieving himself. That's his second explanation. Then he says a third explanation. He says if the person would have extreme, I think he means if he'll have extreme diarrhea and it won't stop, that he'll dehydrate and the person will die. So it means again, afil shachas means once you get to a certain point, if it continues, then the person will not survive. So in the Shulchan Aruch, he quotes all these. There's 3 pshatim that he says. He says, "Shim yiseicha chamem komar." Okay. He says, "Kishugi mei imo hu sasum b'kshiyotzi aver olam hu niftach." It's closed. The mouth is closed when you're in the womb. I feel if it would stay closed, you couldn't survive when you're born. And the things that had to be closed, like the umbilical cord, you would also not be able to survive. So that's the first shot. That's the shot of the tour. That's this little hay, this little dollar rather. The dollar over here says the tour. That's the tour's explanation. And then he says, then he says his own explanation means that after a certain point, a person could not survive. When it says you can't survive even 1 hour, it means after the point of no return. And that's the explanation he says is the Beis Yosef. And then he quotes the third explanation that if a person would have extended diarrhea. The Mishnah Berurah says that most of the Rishonim don't have this girsa. He says the Shulchan Aruch goes to explain all these three explanations of what does it mean afil shalachas. That's because he had Mishum the girsaso hayesh shishkayim afil shalachas. The kashalo the adam piv sosing piv harbi shows, and he had the difficulty. The Maram Rutenberg's question: a person can keep his mouth closed for hours. And that's why you give all those three explanations. We follow the Maram Rutenberg, and that's what the Gra holds and the Tas. So if we follow Mari Rittenberg, the meaning of is much simpler. All these three other explanations in Shulchan Aruch are very complicated. And they're simple, and that is that in the organs of the human body, there's certain things that are closed systems, they have to stay closed. There's certain things that are open, they have to stay open. Now that we with the advanced science, we know that there's so many areas that have to be there's secretions that come out of glands, and things that at least the scientists of before 100 years ago, they didn't even know that there were glands, internal glands in the body. All these things have to be able to function properly, and things that are supposed to be closed, if there'll be a fissure, so then the person will not be able to function. And the things that are supposed, and if there'll be blockages that leads to strokes and to heart attacks and renal failure. So for us, the bracha, if you're going to Shulchan Aruch, you have all these pshatim, but the Mishnah Berurah makes it easier. You don't have to know all these three pshatim. All you have to know is it means that there's openings, things that are open, things that are closed, and the person could not function if they weren't operating properly. And the final thing that the Shulchan Aruch discusses is what is the end of the bracha? Rofe kol basar umafli lasos. First of all, what does rofe kol basar mean? What does it have to do with going to the bathroom? So the Beis Yosef, so the Shulchan Aruch says, Hashem shen lekavim shebara bo lahotzi psolos ma'cholo. It has to do with the fact that the Kadosh Baruch Hu created a system to remove the part of the food that's not needed. Ki yismashish b'mezid yomas, v'otza also refuah. This is another amazing thing. I mean, you think about how incredibly amazing the body is. If there would be no way to remove waste, so even if you had the whole complicated system with all the organs and all the functions and everything, but if the body did not, and the body it would have a way of processing the food, and it's able, which the body does, it goes through the stomach and the intestines, and there's the acids and I don't remember my high school biology anymore, but it's far more complicated than when I was learning biology. All the complicated things that take place to digest the food, and the food gets sent all sorts of different directions to the various limbs, and it creates energy and sustenance. Even if all that was in place, but if there'd be no way to relieve yourself of the waste products, the person would not be able to survive. I mean, and that's perhaps the most obvious connection of the bracha to the person using the bathroom. So according to this, when it says rofe kol basar, you see in brackets it says choli. Some people put in the word choli, which is illness, but we don't say choli, because the word rofe is doesn't mean in this sense doesn't mean to cure. It means to that God is maintaining our health. That's I think you have to understand. Rofe kol basar doesn't mean that God's curing, because there's no illness that He's curing. We're not ill. He's making sure that the body functions. He's taking care. He's the mechanic for our body, and He's oiling everything and tuning it up all the time. So that's what it means. Rofe kol basar, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides a way that the waste products should exit from the body. And then the Shulchan Aruch says, umafli lasos. What does that phrase mean, umafli lasos? It seems to be a redundancy. I mean, the fact that the waste products could leave, that's amazing. But we already said rofe kol basar. So the Shulchan Aruch has two explanations. There's three explanations here altogether. He says, "Minesha adam dam l'nod mali ruach v'miyasa adam minod nekev kachudish l'machad haruach yotzei v'adam malay nekav m'brucham mishtamer tzachah." First explanation, he says, is the same thing we saw before from Rashi, and how Rashi explains b'chachma. And according to Rashi, the beginning of the bracha and the end of the bracha have the theme repeated, that the spirit of man stays inside the body, even though there are areas of openings, and it doesn't disappear. And that's a pella. That a pella mafi means something that's incredible, amazing. Second explanation is, and this comes from the Abu Dram, the test says that stands for Rav David Avram. The second explanation is that the body is able to extract the good from the bad. That it's not only amazing that the waste is removed, but you have the food is all mixed together, and the body is able to take out the nutrients and the vitamins and the things that are necessary to be used, and it's transported throughout to every single limb and every single area in the body, and through every vein and capillary. So that's an amazing thing. So the rofe kol basar, according to Shulchan Aruch, is the fact that the waste products are removed, and the mafli lasos is the fact that the human being is able to extract the sustenance from the body. But the Ramah, from the food, the Ramah has another explanation, and the Ramah says, "V'od yeshafar shemafli lasos b'mesha shomer ruach adam b'kirbo." It's the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the spirit of man inside, the kosher davar ruchni b'davar gashmi, and God connects a physical entity with a spiritual entity. V'akolhu ayideshu rofe kol basar ki az adam b'kav brias. He says that God created a human being is a synthesis of the physical and the spiritual, and the two are dependent on each other. And if the physical body becomes ill and doesn't work, so then the spiritual part of the body, the neshama, departs and goes away. It can't stay in the body. It only remains in the body when the body is healthy. So then the person is able to function. So that synthesis of the physical and the spiritual is amazing, because you could only synthesize two things that have some type of similarity, but they're worlds apart. The physical body is just physical matter, and the spirit is in the neshama. Nobody could touch it, nobody could see it. It's something spiritual. Many of the scientists don't believe in a neshama. I don't know what they believe. They believe that somehow or another there's just chemical reactions in the body, and that's what animates the body, because chemical reactions do not produce awareness. And we all have awareness, so there has to be something to be aware of itself, and that a doorknob is not aware of itself, and a brick is not aware of itself. What is it in the human being? Is not a bunch of chemicals. Chemicals, when you put a 1,000 chemicals together, they're not going to be self-aware. Self-awareness is an indication that there's something, there has to be a spirit there. So that spirit is, it's amazing that the spirit is connected to the body. So that's umafli la'asos. So I threw a lot of information at you today. I'm sorry. It's worthwhile now that I showed it to you. It's worthwhile if you want to study on your own. I could send you all the Mara Makomas by email, but the bottom line is that the bracha has so much richness in it, because when you even if you don't, let's say you're sitting here listening to me and I just mixed you up and confused you because too much at one time. I really try always when I teach to teach as little as possible, because too much information just leaves people confused. So but one thing it's simple to take away from the whole discussion, and that is that the human body is the most amazing thing in the world, and we take it for granted. We think it just works on its own and it just functions on its own, and unfortunately when somebody becomes ill, then suddenly, oh, I didn't realize it was so complicated. And the kunz is that before something happens, before we lose the ability to walk, or the ability to see, or the ability to hear, or that our heart functions well. I remember when I was a child, the people that had heart problems, they walked around with nitroglycerin pills, and all. There was like most of the older people in the shul where I grew up, in my father's shul, they would all the time they would say, "Oh, it's tut mir weh, my heart hurts," and they would pop those nitroglycerin pills. It didn't keep them alive very long. So now they came up. The doctors figured out how to put in stents and how to do grafting and bypasses. Okay, it's amazing. But even then, the body remains with everything the doctors are able to do. The body remains enormously complicated and complex, with all the highways and byways, and I don't know how many miles of pipes are in the body. If you would stretch out all the organs, and with all the capillaries, you can't even see them, they're so small, and you would stretch them out, I don't know, I'm sure it's miles and miles of piping inside the body, and there's openings and there's closings, and there's the integrity of the organs. It's just the most if you don't think about it, then you take it for granted. It's nothing. It doesn't mean a thing. But if you think about it, it's the most amazing thing in the world. And if we're not appreciative, so God says, okay, you don't appreciate what I gave you, I'll help you out. I'll wake you up. And He gives us sometimes wake up calls that we realize that the body is not just functioning on its own. It was a creation by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It didn't evolve. It didn't come from a monkey or from a squirrel. It's super complicated, more complicated than almost anything else in the world. Your own body is so complicated. A person should be a maimin b'Hakadosh Baruch Hu just from. The pasuk says, I forgot the pasuk now. That from myself I recognize Hashem. I forgot the pasuk, but they're just recognizing the unbelievable gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us, and all the things that I mentioned, that the food that the Rishonim say, that God provides the food even before we're born, and when the baby is born, the way the systems start to function as soon as the baby is born, everything goes into motion, and throughout our lives, that all the organs, that we're able to extract the food and we're able to remove the waste products. All these things are absolutely, unbelievably amazing. And it's something that we really have to, if we say the bracha with tremendous kavanah, Mirz Hashem, we should not know of any tzaras, and we should not know of any illness. And the cholim in our community, in this case, also should have a refuah shleima, and we should all live lives where we could serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the proper way. Okay, thank you very much for coming. Next week, I have a wedding Monday night. The Matthews are making a wedding, so I will deliver this year Tuesday night. This will be my last year of the season. I hope to talk about washing your hands when you come out of the bathroom. How many times do you have to wash? You have to wash it once or 3 times, with a vessel, without a vessel. That'll be next week. And I have to run because I have to catch Marav in 5 minutes. So I wish everybody a good night, and thank you very much for being here and listening to this year.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes. Hi. I've got to go to shul. If you need to ask me a question, you have to call me if you're on the phone. I'm sorry. I would like to talk to you, but I got to go to shul. Okay, good night.